This video is brought to you by YTAndrewPaul Tech Repairs. If you have a console, laptop, computer or Macbook in need of repair in the UK or the EU, then have a look in the description below this video for details on how to contact us in order to organise your repair. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's video. And today we're going to be taking a look at this PS4 Pro with an NVG-002 revision motherboard. For those of you playing along at home, this particular board is a 198393111, and it has a problem with its 5-volt connector. Indeed, this is another one where the damn thing is ripped off. Somebody's had a go at trying to solder it back on, but it doesn't work very well. So let's just take a look and see what's going on with it. So of course, this connector here supplies 5 volts into your console, and without it, guess what, it doesn't work. And this thing, although it's been soldered back on, still isn't working. So we need to try and find out exactly why that is. So yes, so this particular machine has come in for a problem with its DVD drive, for its Blu-ray drive as well as making noise. It was stood on apparently. Yeah, so not only was the drive buggered, but this is a bit of a problem as well. So that's our job to try and fix it. So yes, that's what we're going to do today. So what we're going to do is, like I say, it does look like somebody's had a go at trying to put this back on already, but obviously not with much success because it's here. So what we'll do is we'll remove the connector, and we'll take a look and see what is underneath it, just to see what the damage is. Already, kind of see there's a little bit of delamination here. Something's coming up there and hanging over the edge. It just generally looks a bit nasty, doesn't it? So what we'll do is, first of all, as always with this sort of job, is to sort of get the thing back to basics and see what you're looking at. Now, although we've got a little bit of delamination on there, it doesn't look, first off, too bad. To be honest with you, it doesn't look too bad at all on first inspection. It looks like it should be a fairly straightforward repair, but then again, I suppose the ones that look like they're straightforward never really are. Anyway, you'll notice there's a little bit of black marker around the edge of here. I've done that for a reason. That is me. And essentially what you'll notice is when you unplug the power supply from the console, you'll see there's a little hole in the sort of metal shield that sits over the top of this area, and the black pen just outlines where the edge of that hole is, because obviously if we need to run link wires and things like that, I need to make sure that I'm staying within the boundaries of where I can work, so I don't end up ripping the thing off. And as you can see, this thing's very, very loose, so no wonder it didn't work. So I'm just going to get a tweezer blade and soldering iron tip here, and I'm just going to start to desolder this connector where I can. Looks like it's fairly well stuck. I'll do as little damage to the board as I can, ideally. Whoops, where is it stuck now? Okay, so we're not stuck on any pads now. It looks like it's stuck down the side. Is it stuck on down the side? Let's just see if I can get you back in view. Okay. Looks like it's soldered on. Soldered on? It's kind of hard to say. Need a big tip. Okie dokie. There we go. Yeah, it was soldered on. Right. So, what have we got? What haven't we got? Okay. Excuse me. Right. Let's take a look at the horror show that is. Right. Okay. Yeah, it's not it's not too bad, to be honest with you. It's not great, but it's not too bad. So let's just take a look and see what the plan of attack is going to be here. So I'm just going to clean. There's some flux residue on this board where that corner's been soldered in. So I'm just going to clean that off, and then we can get a good look at the state of the board underneath. I'm going to end up washing my indicator off, but it'll be okay. Alright, so looking at this, as I say, it doesn't look too bad. So half of the battle with this is to work out exactly what goes where. Okay, so what we can tell is here we have, if we take a look at the base of the connector, yeah, so we just need to sort of clean that off. We can see there's a little bit of the board here which has come away, which has been sat in this little area here. Alright, so you can see that there, that's that little shape there on the bottom side of the connector. So it's been sat in that way up, okay, which makes sense because of course the pins for soldering are on that side facing the front of the image, and of course as are the pins. So that tells us that the connector is oriented that way around. So we know the connector sits that way up. Okay, so that's quite useful. What isn't so useful is just taking a look here. So you can see that the traces, so the pads were here that it was soldered to, okay, and those run down these tracks, okay. So the first pin comes around here and goes essentially into this area here. So you'll notice the dark green border that separates this internal area here, this lighter green bit, from the rest of this other light green bit here. So we know that this pin here is directly connected to this inner area. Okay, so we know where that pin goes. This second pin here, as we can see, that's kind of lifted up and wobbling around, is, you'll notice that it just runs. It's just in the middle of this green area here. And you can't really see it for the marker pen, but this lighter green area goes all the way around the back of here, all the way around here, here, into here. So when you get such a big area like that, it's usually safe to say that's ground. And you can confirm that with a multimeter. As I say, there's no border, there's nothing else cutting this off, there's nothing insulating it from this larger green bit. That's usually ground. Okay, so you'll notice that the other pins have this dark green area to separate what's in here from the rest of this, but this pin doesn't. So that's usually an indicator that that's ground. You can confirm that with a multimeter by putting it in continuity mode. Continuity mode is the mode where the multimeter will beep when you put the two probe points together. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just kill the I'll kill the air, just so you can hear what we're doing. So when you touch those together, hopefully you can hear they beep. Okay. So this is still connected here, of course. So if we put one multimeter pin on this big copper area here that's around this section here, that is ground. And if we touch to the pin, we can hear a beep, and we have less than 1 ohm resistance, which tells us that this pad here is directly connected, of course, to all this bit here, which is ground. So we know that that pin there is ground. That's fine. Yeah, that's not a problem. Yeah, man, this board is gonna be fun. Anyway, yes, and then for these last two pins here, you can see that again, this is where the pad was, and these two little bits here, the lighter green bit, of course, inside this darker green border, you can see on this third pin here, it runs all the way here, goes up this tiny little sliver here to this little hole. That's a via. That's essentially a pathway that goes through the board into the internal layers. These PCBs are made up of lots of different layers, probably 13, 14, 15 layers maybe, and they're all sandwiched together to create the PCB. Of course, you can only see the top layer and the bottom layer, but in between that is loads of the other ones sandwiched together. And these vias connect through those layers to connect the different pathways all the way through the board. And so this pin here goes through that hole to wherever it goes. The hole is perfectly intact. The hole hasn't been messed with. The hole is in good shape, so we should be okay there. And the same with this fourth one here. You can see it goes up this light shaded area again, up this little sliver here, and just through that little hole just there. So that's where these pins go. So we know we can rebuild this quite easily. It's just about getting some strength in the board. So you'll notice here, look, that this is all ripped up as well. This has all come away. This is where the connector would have originally sat here. You'll notice that on the side, you've got these little tabs here, these little metal tabs here. Those solder into pads on the left and right hand side, so you can see that there. Okay, so that's where it would have sat originally, but of course those have been ripped out. So yes. So what can we do about that then? So the actual pads themselves, we know where they go. So the first pin goes up here, the second pin goes to ground here, the third pin goes here, and this pad goes there. So what can we do to try and get this thing sort of back right again? What can we do in order to actually try and get this thing back in some sort of physical shape? So what the main thing is, there's two main goals with this. Okay, so the first goal obviously is to reconnect all these lifted pins, these missing traces, to get the thing working again. That's obviously sort of the primary objective. The second objective is to actually see if we can get this board back into some sort of serviceable state. So what I mean by that is, if somebody takes this apart again in the future, we want to be sure that they can take this connector in and out without ripping anything else apart, without ripping the board to bits. Obviously, we need to put some strength back in. Now, depending on how bad the damage is, that can be easier said than done. This is kind of what I would call sort of moderate damage. Okay, so light damage would be the pins are missing, but generally speaking, nothing here that gives that port strength is missing. So basically the connector might be ripped up, but the actual pads and everything are still intact, and you just need to resolder the connector on. Okay, that's fairly light damage. This is moderate damage, where you've got missing pads and maybe a little bit of delamination, or some bits and pieces. The structural bits and pieces are missing. Okay, heavy damage is a little bit like was it a 5-pin board repair, or was it the 4-pin SAB? I can't remember. I will link the other 5-volt pin out repair videos we've done. There's one where it was really bad, and the 5-volt connector had the 5-volt pin had actually shorted to ground, and we actually had to dig a hole, literally dig a hole in the board to separate out the 5-volt and the ground layers to stop the short. It worked perfectly afterwards, but yeah, that is what I would call some pretty serious heavy damage. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to try in this instance and get this board back into some sort of state where we can solder this connector on and be fairly sure that it's got some decent strength, and that it's not just going to rip up and give us a problem later down the line, along with anybody else who happens to come in here and try and service it. Now, there's a few ways we can do that. We can either try and make some new pads in here to solder and anchor everything to. The other way we can try and do it is you can actually use some like epoxy. I always tend to put some epoxy on these connectors anyway, regardless when they're damaged, just to give it that little bit of extra security going forwards. But yeah, you just got to play it by ear. Each case is different. That's the beauty of it. No two pieces of damage are the same. You've just got to take each case on merit. So that's what we'll do today, and we'll take a look and we'll see if we can get this thing working properly again. So what we're going to do first of all is just clean this board up and see exactly what we've got when we've done that. So we're just going to take a little piece of desolder braid, and we're just going to take off any old solder that's in there. So we're going to take a fairly thick soldering iron tip. And yes, the air one's on now. So the air one, the fume extractor. So if it's a little bit noisy, I do apologise, but I quite like my lungs in the shape they're currently in. So let's just see if we can take a little bit of this up. Okay, take a little bit of this up. So we're just going to try and desolder whatever's on there at the moment. Okay, you can just see what sort of shape everything is in without any solder on there. Okay, so that's the first job. So we can actually see what the physical state of the board is beneath that sort of damage. As I say, this board actually doesn't look too bad at all, really. I've seen a lot worse. I fixed a lot worse, so I'm just going to rub that off. We kind of know we're safe. As long as we're within that green area, I'm not actually too worried about overstraying the boundary. Sometimes when it's really badly damaged, you kind of got to be really careful where you go around the outskirts of here. But as long as we're inside this green area, we should be fine. So let's just take a look and see what we've got. So we can see here, look, that this sort of little area here, that's where the pad used to be. And then somebody scratched off into here to try and probably stitch this area back together. So you can see where it's torn across. There's probably been some solder. Well, you can see there's some solder here. It's shiny silver, where they've kind of tried to stitch this back together to put a little bit of strength back in, which is the right thing to do. But obviously, it hasn't worked very well because of everything else that's lifted up. So, and then we've got this area here. So, what I would suggest we do is, if I'm just going to clean this connector up off the camera for a second, so literally all I'm going to do is just remove the excess solder from the pins there on the bottom, so I won't be a second doing that. Okay, so that connector's nice and clean now. Okay, so that's ready to sort of see what we can do. So we know it goes this way around. Okay, so what I'm intrigued with is whether we can get these pins on these pads, or where they used to be. So I've got a little bit of room behind here. So what would be cool is if I can move this connector slightly further back. Maybe. Now that's going to foul on the shield there, but if I move it as far forward as I can get it, I'm still within just this green boundary. So you can kind of see there, look, I'm just inside it. That would be enough, I think. That would be fine. And what we could do then is we can link the rest of this to ground to stitch this back in, which makes this strong again. We can scratch back on this area here to give some strength into this side area here, so we can anchor this back into ground. We can stitch this back in with a little bit of solder just to tidy that up, and then we can see if we can scrape a little bit to the side of here. Just again, not so we're fouling the shield up, because we really don't. You can actually see there, look, it's actually shiny. You can see where the edge of that plate, you can actually see where it's dug in, where somebody stood on it. A little bit of pressure has actually dug the plate into the top layer of the board, which yeah, it's not great. It's certainly not pretty, but that's what we're left with. So we should be able to actually do this and get some decent strength back into the board. So that'll be nice. So I'm just making sure these pins are flat, making sure that we've not got any sticky uppy bits that's going to make our life awkward going forward. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to scratch off a little bit of this green conformal coat. So I'm using the edge of a Stanley blade. I'd sort of recommend, if you're used to this, then fine. If you're not used to this sort of work, well, to be honest, if you're not used to this sort of work, I wouldn't recommend you do it. Seriously, it's a lot. You can make this a lot worse and a lot harder for somebody like me to repair by having a go. Now, normally, I'd advocate anybody having a go and trying to learn, but seriously, this is, you can kind of see the state of the board. It's quite weak as it is. You can quite easily make things a lot worse and a lot harder to repair. Which obviously, if you do end up having to send it out, if you do have a go and realise you can't do it, it just makes somebody like me's life a lot harder, and ultimately makes that getting that thing repaired a lot more expensive for you. So unless you're really confident with this sort of work, then to be honest, this repair is one of the few times I would recommend that you actually do send it away. Okay, so we've scratched some new pads in there. Alright. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get some flux, and I'm just going to tin those up. No, I'm not. Actually, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to repair this area here. So, we can see it's already scraped back. So I'm just going to add a little bit of solder, not a lot, to that area. Just to sort of stitch it together, just to get it flat to the board, so it's not sticking up everywhere. Okay, and then right. So now we've done that, there's a little bit of excess up here. I'll just get rid of that. So that just means that's not going to be waving round and moving on us while we're trying to put this connector back straight. And then what I'll do is I'll just put a little bit of solder on each of these areas we've scratched back and away, so that it's ready to take our new connector. So it's to retake our existing connector, but obviously in its new position. So I don't want a lot on there because obviously I need to be able to solder this relatively flat. Okie doke. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this connector. I could do with the bendy tweezers actually, because where am I? I'm going to have to use my nice new ones. Excuse me. Okay, so it is sat slightly proud on this area here. The area where it's delaminated is still sat up slightly. There's no desalt. In fact, that should be fine actually. Just gone back flat. Okay, it was sticking up slightly. Okie doke. So the connector's going to go there. We should be okay for clearance. So I'm just going to hold this somewhere close to where we want it. The tweezer blades are hitting on the bloody 12-volt connector next door to it. That's going to be annoying, because that's going to stop me getting. Right, okay. I'm going to have to do some left-handed soldering, which to anybody who's watched this channel will know. My left hand, to be honest, is purely for decoration, and is useless for anything. So I'm going in with a really small tip at the minute, and that's literally just to get this started. Just to get it somewhere into position, okay? And then it's not ideal, this tip, to be honest with you, but I haven't got a smaller one on hand at the moment. Okay. Okay. So those 4 pins now are connected to where they need to go. Okay. Excuse me. So those 4 pins are soldered in place. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to do a quick continuity test here, just to make sure that this first pin isn't connected to ground. Okay, so we can go from within the connector just to make doubly sure. And we get OL open line on the meter there. This second pin should give us continuity. We should have ground here, because this is a ground pin. And we do. We have 1 ohm to ground. And third pin, shouldn't have anything. And we don't. We have OL. Fourth pin, we should have nothing. And again, the multimeter tells us we have OL open line, no connection to ground. So that's excellent. So we know that we have ground on our second pin in, ground nowhere else. So that's excellent. And we can see we have plenty of that green area behind us there. That's not a problem at all. So all we need to do now is get this connected back in. So, well, when I say connected back in, what we need to do is get some ground connected back onto this connector. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean off this board again down the side of where we've soldered to. Just to tidy it up a little bit. I can worry about that ground area in a little while. But already this connector's got a fair bit of strength behind it. I'm knocking it with the Q-tip and everything and nudging it around with a multimeter and things, and it isn't moving, so it seems to be fairly happy, which is good. So we have it back in place. So all we've done really is just moved it back slightly, and we've used what's left of the existing pads. Yeah, so it's actually worked out pretty well. Like I say, this is fairly moderate damage. It's not anything too major. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're just going to scrape back a tiny bit of copper. Okay. Next door to the side, and where the side, on the side of the connector, of course, is that little ground sort of shield there, where it was previously soldered onto its little locating pad. So essentially all we've done there is just scratched in a new locating pad. Okay. And then what we'll do, we'll pop a little bit of flux down. Put a little bit on the side of the connector. And then probably not the best thing to do it with the smaller tip, to be honest with you, but get a little bit going there, and we can. I'll just come back in with the big tip and we'll just reflow that. Okay, down onto there, that's fine. And then we'll just put a little bit back on the edge of here. Just to stitch that area back together. Okay, that's all okay. That's all absolutely fine now. Okay, well, we've got a little bit of excess there. We'll just get that with the braid. The wires on my soldering irons today are being little gits. Okay, so that should be okay there. So we should have a fair degree of strength back in this now. You can see I can rock this about with the tweezers I can move the board with it, and it ain't moving. So that's a good sign. Everything seems okay. I can push down it. I can sort of rock it back and forward. You can see there I can't move it at all. The pins all look well connected to their pads and everything. Should be absolutely fine. We are sort of struggling for space a little bit on this side of the connector. We're fairly close to the edge. So I'm not going to do anything with that side. I'm going to leave that side unanchored. But what I will do is I'll pop a little bit of epoxy around this connector after the repair. And then that should hold it perfectly well. And we should be okay. Alright. So this has been fairly straightforward really in the end. But actually, if you are having issues and yours isn't so straightforward, excuse me, the vias on that board go through here. They go into this little section here. So that's the back of the 12 volt connector. Okay, those are the two pins that stick up. And then to the right hand side of that, you've got this little area here. That's where those pins to the 5 volt connector come out. Okay. Now, obviously, because I've resoldered that connector and we've just been able to move it back slightly, I haven't had to check which of these vias here correspond to which pin. What I actually believe is, and I'll double check this, okay, so I'll confirm this on the video and I'll put a little diagram in with the confirmed pin out. If you've got more damage than I had and you have to run link wires across to the other side of the board, I will pop in that little diagram for you here now. Okay, so hopefully if you've got more damage than me, that little diagram that was in just then, hopefully that'll show you where you need to run your link wires to. But just be mindful, excuse me, okay, just be mindful, like I said, that if you are going to run wires and you haven't got a small enough diameter wire to go through the via, okay, then what you will need to do is obviously you'll need to run your wires around this area, so you'll have to be really tight with your work. It will be small scale, it will be fiddly, but you can do it. But just be mindful. Do what I did initially and just put a little bit of marker pen around the base before you take the board out, and then it'll just show you where the boundary edge is, and then you know that you're not straying outside with your wires. And the reason why is because if you go outside of that connector, if you go outside of that area, the ground shield and everything, when it goes back together, sits directly over this portion of the board. You can see actually where it's dug in here. Okay, so you can actually see where it resides when it's all screwed in. And unfortunately, any wires that go under there will actually be cut through. So you might do all this work and get it all done, and you might be tempted to run some wires through here. But of course, as soon as you screw everything back together, it's going to go straight through those wires, cut everything off, and just short everything out and make an even bigger mess. Yeah, at best, it's not going to work. At worst, it's just going to create hell. So, excuse me, that is one just to be careful of. But as you can see there, we've got plenty of room at the back of our connector. We've only moved it back slightly. Everything is nice and sort of solid. Like I say, what I will do is I will pop a little bit of epoxy just around the edge of this connector just to make sure it definitely doesn't go anywhere, but it should be absolutely fine now. So yes, so what we will do is we'll reassemble this. I'll put some epoxy on here now. We'll get this reassembled, and then obviously we'll plug it into the TV, we'll give it a test, and hopefully everything's going to work nicely. And we'll also see if that DVD drive's still Blu-ray drive even still making a load of racket like it was earlier, or whether we fix that as well. So join us in a sec, guys and girls. We'll see whether we've got a success or whether we've failed. Right, okay then, ladies and gentlemen, so we have this thing here now. So you can see it's this PS4 Pro on the top. Here we've got the cables connected into the back. So what we'll do is we'll power it on. We'll see what we get. Which one's power? There we go, lovely stuff. So we have a blue light. Do we have anything on the screen? This is the question. We have sync. Okay, looks like it's going into safe mode, is it? I think it may be rebooting. Okay, do we get anything at all? Come on, baby. There we go. Okay, fantastic. So that's just doing a system check. So who knows what happened last time it was turned on, but it obviously wasn't shut down. So this is just going to take a second. In the meantime, I'll just go find my test disc and then we can test this Blu-ray drive out as well. Okay, so I have a test disc here as well. This is literally just a piece of crap. SingStar Ultimate Party. Jesus Christ, I tell you what. You want me to have a go at that. Although I might sound like Barry White at the minute. But okay, so we're just waiting for this to come back up. So it'll reboot again. Now it's performed that disk check. Okay, there we go. So it'll go into the OS very, very shortly. I'll need to plug a controller in as well, won't I? I don't have a controller plugged in. Okay. So this thing, when you put a disc in, apparently the other fault it had was, as I say, it's been stood on. And when you put a disc in, it would make the most awful crunching, grinding sound. I actually took the lid of this off and had a look underneath, and the lid was literally bananas. It stretched the metal as well, so you couldn't even bend it back into shape. It was completely buggered, so I just replaced the top. So with any luck, I mean, if not, I mean, I've put this back together and I've put all the screws in it. I'm feeling brave or stupid, one of the two. Okay, let's just plug a controller into this unit. And then we'll be able to see what we've got. Okay, so where's the USBs on these things? At the front. Okie dokie. Let's get this synced up. Okay, and then we'll hit the X button. Okay, lovely stuff. Nice. Right, so let's put a disc in, let's see what it sounds like. Okay, disc goes in. I'm spinning it. It's reading it. And it sounds like a PlayStation. Fantastic. It doesn't sound like a cement mixer anymore, which is really good. Okay. Lovely. Right, done. So, what does that say there? The PlayStation camera has a built-in microphone. Thanks for that. Whatever's going across up there just caught my eye. Anyway, as you can see, so this is fantastic. So not only have we repaired that 5-volt connector, but we've also sorted out that dodgy Blu-ray drive as well. Fantastic, and it all worked first time. Oh, belting. I'll tell you what, the number of times I've put all the screws back together in something to realise that there's still something wrong with it. Because, like I said, this is the first time I've had a chance to test it. So although it's nice and quiet, it didn't mean it was going to read any discs. You know, the laser might have been screwed. But, yeah, no, it's all working perfectly fine. Excellent, so this can go back. That's really, really great. So, I have to say that that's actually repaired a lot easier than I thought it was going to do. I thought we were going to have to run some link wires and everything, but actually, as you could see there, we had plenty of room just to nudge that connector back by a couple of millimetres to actually create some new pads. And as you can see, everything's working perfectly fine, and everything is hunky-dory again. And this PlayStation lives to live another day. And it was an easy enough repair as well. So yes, like I say, I thought we were going to have to go doing pinouts and sort of doing some trace finding and things like that, but actually that's not been the case. So that's good for me, I suppose, but not so good for you guys. But as I say, if you look a little bit further back, the timestamp will be in the description for the pinouts, in case you're not as lucky as I am and you actually need to run some wires. But yes, so hopefully this has been useful to you, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, then please remember to give us that big thumbs up down on the bottom of the video. It really helps the channel grow. The YouTube algorithm uses likes, the dislikes and everything else to actually work out whether it's worth showing more people. So the more people like it, the better, well, yes, the better the channel will hopefully become, the bigger it will grow. And the more videos that we'll be inclined to upload. So thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions at all, then feel free to pop them in the comments below. I will try and get to them as soon as I can. If I know the answer, I'll pop it down for you. Likewise, if you have a faulty machine of your own, whether it be PlayStations, Xboxes, Nintendo Switches, things of that nature, then again, feel free to drop me a message. My business email is in the description, but that is YTAndrewPaul@outlook.com. Drop me a message there with your machine, the fault you're having, and your location, and I'll try and get a quote to you as soon as I can do. Likewise, if you need any components for these machines, we've stocked quite a few of them, so feel free to hit me up. We can ship components worldwide, so no matter where you are, we should be able to get those bits and pieces to you if you fancy conducting these repairs yourself. So thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. You've been fantastic as always. I've been Andy Paul. This PlayStation has been very cooperative, and yes, I've not felt like throwing it through the window today, so that's good. So thanks very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you on the next video in the not too distant future. So from me for now, it's bye-bye, and I hope life treats you well. Many thanks for watching then, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then why not check out these recommendations below. Also, please remember to comment, rate, and of course subscribe to the channel if you found this useful. We've plenty more content on there, and there's lots more to come.